Well, this is exciting. To help me deal with the fact that Kat is not present and is such a big part of the show, we've had to bring in a ringer. Kat's on assignment. She's taking a well-deserved vacation, but joining me is a good friend, Nan McNamara. She is an award-winning actress. She's a director. She's a writer. She's a producer. She's based in Los Angeles, and she's garnered critical acclaim for her stage performances, notably receiving the Stage Raw Award and the Robbie Award. Additionally, she's earned the Los Angeles Drama Critics Circle Award and the LA Weekly Award for her role as Vivian Baring in Margaret Edson's Pulitzer Prize-winning play Wit. Now, on television, you might remember Nan as she's appeared in popular series like Hawaii Five-0, Criminal Minds, and 911 Lone Star, where she got to fulfill a lifelong dream that we all have, and that's kissing Rob Lowe. What was that like?
Oh, if only I had gotten to kiss him. If only. You know what? I did get to school him, though, and that's almost the same thing, right?
Were you pegging your adrenal meters?
You know what? I got to tell you, when I had to walk over and sit down and rehearse with him, I got a little verklempt, a little like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And he's actually better looking now than he was when he was younger. How does that work? Does he have a pact with the devil?
You think he does? Maybe
I don't know.
He has
there might be
some
a painting
sort of
somewhere.
An agreement with Beelzebub, the Prince of Darkness.
I don't know. I hope not. He was a very nice guy.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your very, very busy schedule. I know you've got a lot going on.
I am so honored. And I have to say, I cannot even think about filling in to Kat's shoes, but I will do my best.
Well, that's just as well, because the dog has chewed her shoes and they probably would be uncomfortable to begin with. We're going to talk a little bit about coincidences. My story is about coincidences.
Oh, good.
And
I love that.
We've all had them. We've all had bizarre encounters that almost defy explanation. Maybe you run into an old friend that you haven't seen in years, just as you were thinking about them.
That has happened a lot.
Me too. Or you find the exact book you needed on a random bookshelf in a library or a bookstore, and it was like you weren't even planning on browsing, but there it is. Most of us shrug off these moments. We chalk them up to chance. But what if they're not just coincidences? What if these moments are something greater?
Oh, I like where this is going.
Maybe it's a glimmer of synchronicity. Or even, Nan, some sort of a miracle.
I believe in that stuff, yeah.
The line between coincidence and miracle becomes almost impossible to define, because it just seems like an impossibility that this could happen. It's the tale of a father and a son who were estranged for many years, but whose lives became interwoven in a way that, it was so astounding that it almost seemed otherworldly. It's the kind of story that makes you wonder, could there be something bigger guiding us? Is there something out there that we just can't perceive with our little pea brains?
Okay, I'm getting goosebumps. Just saying.
Well, just wait. The story begins with a falling out. There was a fight. A father and a son had a rift that was all too familiar in so many families. We've all, especially around the holidays, and I know there's a lot of tension right now in the U.S., especially among family members.
For sure.
This happened before that, but a father and a son, they had a bitter argument, and it was the kind that cuts deep and leaves wounds. The type of wounds that never seem to heal. Words were exchanged, doors were slammed, and ultimately silence stretched between the two of them. It went on for days, and then months turned into years, and neither made the first move to bridge the gap. Now, I've been involved in this type of family dispute, and one went on for about 6 months, but the people involved decided, we need to sit down and talk about this.
Good.
And it was beneficial because we don't always have all the time in the world. And we discovered that during this particular incident.
Yes.
It's pride, it's hurt, it's stubbornness. It keeps people apart. Now, the son was kind of a restless spirit. He loved to travel, and he decided that he was going to leave his hometown and explore the world, which he did. And of course, that affected his opportunities to reconcile with his dad.
Right.
He took to the trails of Europe. Have you ever gone to Europe, Nan? I'm sure you have.
I have. I've never done like a hiking trip. We have friends who did something in, I think it was Ireland, where they went from one part of the country to the other just on foot. Although they did have somebody carrying their suitcases for them in a car. So it was a little glammy, a little, nicer than you got a backpack.
Glamping.
Yeah. Glamping, yes.
My goal is to go to every country in the world that I possibly can and then just stay in the hotel and not do anything.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't that sound glamorous?
Love it. I'm a hotel gal. What can I say?
Yeah, me too. Anyway, so he's hiking through this breathtaking landscape and he's immersing himself in the distractions of travel. Mm-hmm. One day he's in this tiny European village and he stopped at a local cafe for a bite to eat. And he's just sitting there at a table scanning the menu and he heard a voice calling his name. And he turned around and he was surprised to see somebody from his hometown, not somebody that he was good friends with. It was more of a casual relationship.
But still, you're in a foreign country, right? I mean, that's pretty unusual.
What are the odds of that?
Right.
He hadn't even thought of this person in years.
Yeah.
But they caught up, and after a bit of small talk, the acquaintance, her tone turned a bit somber and said, I'm really sorry to hear about your father. And the son froze. He said, what do you mean? And she said, you didn't know? Your father passed away recently. It was in the local papers.
Dang it.
So the shock hit him like a punch in the gut because he had been thinking about reaching out, and every time he thought he would, he didn't. Mm-hmm. He hadn't spoken to his dad in years at this point, and now he'd missed his chance to reconcile, to make amends, to say goodbye. So grief and guilt, of course, understandably overcame him as he tried to process the news. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what I would do in a situation like that.
I think I would just bawl first.
He'd been so wrapped up in his own life that he hadn't even known his father was gone. In his sorrow, the son decided he needed to do something to honor his father's memory. Mm-hmm. Now, he wasn't particularly religious, but his father was, and he felt drawn to a place of spiritual significance. Mm-hmm. He decided to travel to Jerusalem and visit the Wailing Wall, which was a sacred site that he remembered his dad talking about visiting whenever his dad was traveling for business in that part of the world. It seemed like an appropriate pilgrimage for the son to make.
Mm-hmm. I've always wanted to go there.
Me too. Arriving in Jerusalem, the son made his way to the ancient wall. Now, he reported later to friends that it was a warm, sunlit day, and the air was just buzzing with the murmurs of prayer and the rustling of notes on paper that were being slipped into the cracks of the ancient stones. For those unfamiliar, the Wailing Wall is not just a place for prayer, but it's a repository of hopes and dreams and prayers. People will write down their deepest wishes or fears on scraps of paper and tuck them into the wall, leaving them in the hands of something greater.
Can I ask a question here? I've always wanted to know, what happens to those little pieces of paper? Because doesn't the wall get full at some point?
I think it's self-regulating. I think that a lot of the paper will blow away or just disintegrate. I don't think they remove any of them. Okay. I think nature takes care of that.
Yeah, sure. It's paper, right? How long can it last?
It's paper.
Yeah.
So the son approaches the wall, and his emotions It's a combination of regret and longing
Mm.
and the faint hope that somehow his father could recognize that he had come here to honor his memory. So he stood there for a while, feeling the weight of the moment. And then, almost on a whim, he began to pull out some of the notes tucked into the wall, curious about the thoughts and prayers of strangers. That's when it happened, Nan.
No.
Among the countless pieces of paper, one note caught his eye. It was yellowed with age, the handwriting slightly faded, but it was still legible. He unfolded it and he began to read it. And he got a lump in his throat. It caught his breath. The note had been written by his father,
No.
addressing him by his full name.
Mm.
In it, his father had written about his heartbreak over their estrangement. He expressed his deep regret for the argument that they had had that had driven them apart and his yearning to reconcile with his son. The words were raw and honest and filled with the kind of vulnerability that only comes from a place of deep love and sorrow. It said, among other things, quote, "I hope that one day my son will forgive me. I pray that he knows how much I love him." And the note had been placed in the wall years earlier during one of his father's trips to Jerusalem. The odds of that happening, the odds of him finding it out of all those thousands, possibly millions of notes that have been placed in the wall over the years, astronomical. Yet, here it was, a message from his father, seemingly waiting for him. It felt like a bridge had been built between them, spanning not just distance and time, but even death. And in that moment, he felt his father's presence more strongly than he had ever felt it in his life. So how do you explain something like this?
Oh my gosh. I just think that's a screenplay. That's so cinematic. I mean, and you're right, JG. It's miraculous.
Was it just an unbelievable stroke of luck? It seems like the odds are suggesting something else,
Yeah,
something greater, a
for
sign
sure.
that perhaps the universe or his father had orchestrated this moment to bring them together for one last time. And the son, he didn't have the answers, but
Mm,
he really didn't need them. All he knew was that the note had given him the closure that he so desperately needed.
yeah.
So, coincidence or miracle? My thought is, Nan, that that's the same thing.
Yeah.
Could the son's journey to the wall, his decision to pull out that specific note, and the note's presence there all be random chance? Well, maybe. But even the most skeptical among us have to admit the odds are mind boggling. Moments like this make us wonder if there's more to the world than what we can explain. And the son left that
Mm,
wailing wall that day forever changed. Now, he carried that note with him, Nan, everywhere he went as a reminder of his father's love and the mysterious forces that had brought them together once
mm-hmm.
again. He no longer felt the weight of guilt or regret. Instead, he felt a profound sense of peace and connection. Life is indeed full of mysteries, and sometimes things seem to align in a way that define explanation. And that leaves us to marvel at the wonder of it all, whether you call it synchronicity or miracle or coincidence or just pure chance. One thing is certain, moments like these have the power to change us and to heal us. And perhaps we're not as alone as we think.
Mm-hmm.
I got this from a book called Small Miracles, Extraordinary Coincidences in Everyday Life by Ida Halberstrom and Judith Leventhal. And it's just one of those situations where you don't have any hard and fast evidence or answers.
Right, right.
But the fact that the question itself is there and so profound, it really makes you wonder, how could that have happened by chance?
No. And it not only I think it's a miracle, it's such a gift to that young man.
Mm.
Because if he hadn't had that, think of the weight, the guilt that could have consumed him for the rest of his life.
Are there people in my life that I have not made amends with for arguments
Right.
we've had in the past?
Yes.
And if there are, then maybe it's time to reach out.
Right. Because you never know.